Welcome back to the Legend of Inside Sports. I'm Gary Johnson, and I'm here with my co-host Harold Bell, and our guest today is Tom Nugent. I want to pick back up where we left off, Harold. Some time elapsed, and then you caught back up with the champ. I think it was, 3 or 4 years later? Tell us about that.
Yeah, 1970, I just started Inside Sports. That was the debut of Inside Sports on WOOK Radio. And I was good friends with a guy by the name of Harry Barnett. He was an attorney, graduate of Howard University. He was a guy that had a whole lot of black spirit, but he was white, but he fit right in. He represented George Foreman. And Harry was a guy like chasing them ambulances, automobile accident. That's how I met Harry. And during that summer, Harry asked me, man, how you like to ride on up to Cleveland with me and J.D. Bethea? J.D. Bethea was a sports columnist for the Washington Star, brother. And I knew J.D. from around the community. So I said, why not? I'd take the ride. So we rode up to Cleveland. Muhammad Ali was putting on a boxing exhibition, a charity thing for Children's Hospital. Well, I didn't know anything about Don King or his involvement or anything, but I was going up there because of Muhammad Ali, And once we got into the hotel where everything was headquartered, Muhammad Ali was having a little jive press conference, standing up, and telling jokes or whatever else. And he looked over and spotted me. And he said, Harold Bell, what you doing here, man? How did you get up here? Blew me away. It's 3 years I haven't seen this guy. But he remembered who I was, man. So all focus turned on me, Don King was in the crowd, Lord Price, the rhythm and blues singer, who's an icon. Come to find out, he was the one that introduced Don King to Muhammad Ali because Lord had a relationship with Muhammad Ali. And Don, of course, was a man around Cleveland with a dubious distinction. He was, a number runner, a guy who was a thug and a hooligan, and he had just gotten out of jail for killing a guy over a number bet. I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, we stopped, and I went up, and he would continue his press conference, and that's when, things started happening for me. People started coming up to me, find out how did I know Muhammad Ali. I had to tell that story all over again. But it was then and there that he made me feel special. I met Rockmont, his brother, who really was the guy that had Muhammad Ali's back during those early years, when his career was just taking off. And a funny thing happened at that fight, man. I met a lot of great people, but evidently Don King had gotten into Muhammad Ali's ear, and Don King was the one putting on the promotion for Children's Hospital. And he had convinced Muhammad, to give him rights to promote his fights. And everybody was against it, the Nation of Islam, everybody. But Muhammad Ali, being the type of individual that he was, wanted to help a black brother, because we didn't have any black promoters at the time. He decided to go ahead and sign off on that. So that evening, after the fight, J.D. Bethea come up and say, hey, Harold, I'm having breakfast with Don King in the morning. You want to join us? I said, yeah, why not? So I went to breakfast, and J.D. was doing a story on Don King for the Washington Star. And I sit in on it, and of course, Don, I was mesmerized by Don King, all these big words that he was using, man, sound like an intelligent brother, And one of the last things he said after the interview, Harold, baby, stick with me, we're going places. And of course, we know that story. We know who went places.
Somebody went up, somebody went
down. Somebody went up, somebody went down. But that's how Don King came into power. And he came into power because of Lord Price, who he ended up kicking to the curb. No loyalty. We found that out about Don. But, Muhammad Ali, man, I had to take my hat off to him when he says he wants to give a brother a break, man, and give him an opportunity. He gave me my opportunity. He put me on the map. I got instant credibility with Muhammad Ali and Red Auerbach. I got to give those two the credit for me having the success, a limited success that I had in sports media.
Okay. Let's bring Tom back. Tom, did you ever have the opportunity to work with or meet Don King?
No, I did not. Of course, I watched with amazement and fascination. He was one of the most interesting, colorful figures. He had that aura. I don't know. You hear politicians say, so-and-so is special because, quote, when he walks in the room lights up. In fact, I just quoted Tyronn Lue, the new NBA championship coach. I just profiled him for a magazine the other day and got lucky after my profile. He seemed to have won he and LeBron pulled it off somehow, and they won, of course, they won the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked him what it's like to work with LeBron James and some of these other great, Michael Jordan and so on, he said, it's simple. When they walk in a room, the room lights up. And that was my gut feeling about Don King. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Don King had that type of aura. So did Red Auerbach. And, of course, we know Muhammad Ali did. Jim Brown had that type of aura, too. He could walk into a crowded room and all eyes would focus right on there because I know that because I walked into rooms with them and I had that type of experience. Yep.
Well, Joe Namath, I don't mean to interrupt, but Joe Namath had it too, and there's a funny moment. I did some years at People magazine where I'd focus on these profiles, and I did a bunch of sports things. And one time I got into the locker room. We were under pressure. We had to get the quote, and so I had no choice. My heart was in my throat, but I burst into a meeting, and I said, Mr. Namath, People magazine here, if you don't mind, sir, just one question. And he said, okay, but before I answer it, I've got a question for you. Why are you interrupting our team meeting?
Team meeting.
So, it's that same quality. These guys are like kings. They exude that special aura, and I think it's magical. I'm not sure there is a scientific way to describe what Ali had. He simply had it. One last note. One time I was writing about Elvis after he died, and I was writing on a story, and I was in Memphis, and I'm talking to a drummer in a band, and I said, what was it that Elvis had? And the guy thought for a minute, and he said, gee, I don't know. He said, I'll tell you this. I wish the hell I had it.
Right. Amen. Amen.
You either have it or you don't. And I guess those folks had it. Now,
yeah.
I was going to ask Harold, you eventually went on to build a relationship with Don King.
Right. Yeah, I did. And after Don King had signed on with Muhammad Ali, he moved his offices to New York City. And we stayed in touch. And I'm trying to think of the year that it was that I went up to New York City and met with Don. I'd been invited up to have lunch with him. He said, come on up, Harold, and have lunch with me. So on that particular day, I took the train up, and we had a 1 o'clock date for lunch. And I went into his office, and I met his right-hand girl. Her name was Connie Harper. And she said, Harold, Don will be right back. Well, it came 3 o'clock, Don still wasn't back, So Connie, but I learned a lesson from Connie Harper, and she gave me some of the best advice that I could ever have. She said, Harold, whatever happens, what goes down between you and Don, don't ever take any money unless you earned it, okay? And say, remember that. And so that was a great lesson, and I learned that, and that's why Don and I had so many clashes, because I wouldn't laugh at every joke. I wouldn't let him put money in my hand. I paid my own way. When I went to Las Vegas to the fights, a lot of reporters had rooms under Don King. They ate in the meals off Don King. I didn't do any of that, and he couldn't figure that out, man. So Connie Harper was. Let me give you a little information on Connie Harper. Connie Harper was Don King's right-hand lady in Cleveland, and he brought her to New York to protect his back. And, of course, Don King, as we know, has been in and out of court. But one of the biggest challenges that he had was with the IRS. they had him locked down, get ready to send him to jail when Connie Harper took the rap, the IRS tax income thing, and she served time in jail. I don't know if it was 6 months or a year, but anyway, she was never wanting for money again. Don King beat him again, but Don King was that kind of guy. I remember going to dinner one night with him and Roberto Duran in New York, and a guy by the name of Luis Hernandez, who was a beautiful brother. Luis Hernandez was Roberto Duran's interpreter, and he lived in New York, and we became great, great friends. And we were having dinner, and of course, Don King was picking up the tab. It was about 10 of us, so, I ain't minding paying for my dinner. So one of the guys asked, you get one of those menus with no price on it. And the guy asked, how much is this? Don King said, let me tell you something, brother. If you got to ask, you cannot afford it. And he was absolutely right, man. But he just had that he could talk his way in and out of everything. And he did a lot of talking his way out of a lot of things too, man. My whole time with him, man, I was one of the few, if any, I know I was another brother by the name of Howie Evans, the sports media director at the New Amsterdam News. Howie was outspoken too, and Don would not hire any blacks in his media office. It always was somebody white. And I caught a lot of hell, man, getting press credentials to leave Washington, D.C. and go to Las Vegas and get to Las Vegas, and I don't have press credentials. Bert Sugar went through that same thing because Bert was another one of those guys that didn't kiss him when he sat down. And so me and Bert became great friends. And boy, I tell you, that was something. Sometimes he'd sit us up in the nosebleed section. He'd sit me up there one time, and then he'd sit Bert down at ringside. But a lot of times I got there, man, I didn't have press credentials. Thanks to his son, Carl, who would tell me where his daddy was. He said, Harold, he's hiding out in the trail at a certain place. And I go knock on the trailer door. He opened up the door. How you find me? I said, don't even worry about it. I said, man, why I don't have press credentials? Why I got to keep going through this kind of thing, And you sort of discrepancies there, man, at the media press table. It was dominated by white folks, man, and they even some of them had their children with them, and you get teed off, man, when you see something like that. So that's why Don and I had several clashes, man, about how blacks were treated in media.
Okay, I want to before we take a short break, I want to just follow up and kind of project a roadmap of where I want to go when we come back from break. Because I recently went back and saw the documentary When We Were Kings. And it was a lot of behind-the-scenes footage of Ali, Don King, and a lot of what happened. And I want to lead into the rumble in the jungle and what happened after that fight.
Right.
So we'll be back. Stay with us with Harold Bell and Tom. We'll be right back.